Welcome, humble runners. Today I've got a full head to toe gear review roundup. I've got a few pieces of gear and tech that I've been testing and even racing in. But before I get to that, take a moment, head on over to humblerunning.com. Sign up for my newsletter if you haven't already done so. On that website, I post kind of quick links, updates, things that are going on across my channel, on Instagram, stuff that I have in for test, short gear reviews, stuff that I'm going to talk about in this video review here today. It's just a way to keep you guys in the loop on what's going on. I promise I will not spam you. I send out those updates on a bi-weekly basis. I'm actually a little bit late this week. That's just proving that I will not spam you. You will not be flooded with emails. Don't worry about it. You will just get all the best updates on what's going on in humble running. All right, let's get right into it. The first thing I have for you today is the Bollé Victus Pro sunglasses here. These are steel blue metallic. I have been training and racing in these for quite some time. I've raced these at the Race to Roby Creek half marathon, also Heaven's Gate 19-mile mountain run. You can check my videos on those. I did a couple videos where I talked about training and racing. If you're interested in that kind of thing, head on over, check those videos out. As far as these shades here, these are perfect. You can see it was a little overcast before. The sun is coming out now and they are tinting quite a bit. Initially, these will be quite clear. So they're perfect for overcast days. When I'm out there, when it was cloudy as it was in this morning, it brings a level of clarity that's really great out on the trails. Sometimes you'll get those rose tinted lenses and they will get a little bit too contrasty. I find that these don't have quite that level of contrast, but they do brighten up your view quite a bit without really having that level of color distortion. The main feature I like about these is these Fit Tech temple design here. I have a close-up that you can see. You can see it's kind of like a two-part arm here, and I find that these rear parts of the arms can kind of lock in on the rear part of your head behind the ears, and it reduces pressure on the top of your ears here. So I really like that, and I could also tuck them into, if I'm running in, say, a bucket hat or a cap, I can kind of tuck those in there so it's really almost not even on my ears. And that, another thing is that leaves your ears clear if you are wearing headphones, which I'll talk about in just a second here. Nose piece is fully adjustable here, and I find in conjunction with these Fit Tech temples here, again, this is supposed to be kind of impact resistant, but also in terms of vibration, I don't feel too much movement in here, but I do feel that it does kind of hug your head a little bit better than normal sunglasses. Another factor is that puts this section of the arm, the front section, a little bit further away from the face, and you have these ventilated areas here. So I don't know if that plays a factor in letting airflow go through these vents and away from your head, but it's a very comfortable shade. Like I said, my last two races I've run in these, and I will be running and racing in these shades throughout the rest of 2025. So check these out if you get a chance. Really like these shades from Bollé. Next thing I have for you is these Nank headphones. I've got these right here. This is the Runner 4. Now this is a bone conduction headphone. If you take a look here, these are similar to a Shox headphone, but they're quite a bit less expensive, I found. On the run, you can see this is typically my treadmill headphone. They sent me two models, and I've tested this one indoors and outdoors, and I kind of like this one on the treadmill because I'm typically not wearing, I receive these in the colder months. So one of the issues with these kind of wraparound headphones is when you have kind of a winter hat, it could kind of get a little tricky to get it under the hat and then have the hat not kind of mess up the orientation of the headphones. So I do like this indoors on the treadmill. You have pretty easy tactile volume controls here. Power, volume up, volume down. I'm not an audiophile, I'll tell you that right now, but I did have a pair of original Aftershocks before they renamed themselves to Shox, and I found the sound quality pretty on par, equal, indistinguishable from these, and the price is definitely much cheaper. So this is a bone conduction model. If you're not familiar with that, there's a little bit of sound coming out, but it mainly works on vibration getting through to your ears, and it leaves your ear canal open to hear external sounds. This is what you want when you're running, especially out on the roads. Also out on the trails if you want to hear bikes coming behind you, animals, rattlesnakes, that kind of thing. This is what you want to have out on the trails. It's better for safety. Nank also sent me another model. This is called the Clip Pro. When I was kind of looking through their catalog, they asked me what I wanted to try out, and I said, well, my aftershocks were kind of falling apart. Again, those were an older model, so I definitely wanted to try out a bone conduction model. But then I was browsing around, I saw these Clip Pros. They look kind of interesting. It was kind of, I would say, a throw-in. Just compare and contrast these. But I actually ended up liking these quite a bit more. I've seen some commercials for Bose having some, and I believe there's a few other high-end brands that have these clip-style headphones. But when I got these, it was not something that I really was aware about. These are more of a traditional earbud. These go inside of your ear. They have a little speaker here, but you have this clip kind of thing, and it kind of wraps around. In the pictures, they show it being more horizontally oriented, but for my, I guess, ear shape, whatever you want to call it, I find that they work pretty fine if they're down here. And on the run, these do not move at all. And again, like I said, if you wear sunglasses, it's one less thing wrapping around your ear. These are completely out of the way. So, you know, you have a lot of tech going on around your body. I think these are perfect. Like, this has been my go-to headphones pretty much anytime I'm running outdoors these days. I prefer them over this. Again, I know people like this, you know, you have the wraparound, but in the winter I have the issues with wearing a beanie with these kind of headphones, so I just kind of like leave these on the treadmill, and these are just my outdoor ones, and they're easier to stash, you know, if the battery does run out, if I forget to charge them or something like that. These can be a little like tricky. You don't want to bend this too much and stuff it in a vest pocket if you are running with a vest. So even if you don't have a vest, you can just stash these in your pocket if you're tired of listening to whatever you're listening to. So these are the Clip Pro from Nank. I highly recommend these. I haven't tried those kind of high-end, more expensive ones. I saw the commercial. I was watching basketball last night, and there was a commercial for Bose headphones, similar clip design. I'm sure those are probably several $100s, maybe more expensive. Again, not an audiophile, but out on the trail, outdoors running, I think the quality is just fine. And if you want to try this type of design, why not start off with something a little bit less expensive, something you could experiment with. Again, if you're out trail running or you're out running, you're going to get sweaty and stuff like that. It's not, you know, more of a casual usage thing. You're putting these through the ringer. If you're out there trail running, you may stuff them in your vest with gels and all kinds of stuff. So maybe better not to have high-end electronics, at least in that regard. So Nank headphones here, really like those. Next one, Roll Recovery Super Plush slides here. I've got these. These have been excellent. I kind of have been onto the recovery slide game. I've tested some from UFOS. I really like these because they kind of have a wrap around design here. It holds the foot well, and the sizing is really good. I have these in a US 9. My true to size is US 9.5. So a lot of times I'm in between sizes. I tested a kind of full shoe type model from Kane Recovery, and the sizing was just a little bit off. They didn't do half sizes either, and a 10 was way too loose, and being that it had the heel and it was more of like a shoe type versus a sandal design, that one I just couldn't get the right fit. The 9 was too tight. This 9 is perfect. Again, look, I've got my Injinji socks here, and I've got a perfect fit on here. I like this design. Very stable on the ground, wraps the foot well. This is called their Bloom Algae EVA blend. This is made from algae, this foam, a blend of algae. I don't know what composition they come up with there, but it's very comfortable. It's not overly squishy. Some of these recovery sandals, you know, the ones I'm talking about, they could feel like you're just like on marshmallows, and I kind of feel like maybe you don't want to be so unstable if you're tired or your feet are tired. I don't know, maybe you like the softness. Probably an issue of personal preference, but I find this to be a very good density. There's light contouring under the arch, a little bit of texture underneath. I think they're just perfect. I have these next to my treadmill. I leave them by the door when I go out for a run. As soon as I come home, I don't like to be tracking my sweaty feet around the house. Pop off the shoes, pop off the socks, throw these on and walk around as I'm having my recovery drink or rehydrating or whatever. Great product from Roll Recovery. They also have some pretty cool colors. They sent me this red one. Wouldn't have been my first choice to have this bright red sandal here, but they do have some more understated colorways, I would say. So Roll Recovery sandals, excellent. Moving on to the sock department here, I have the Injinji Courtney Crew. These are 58% nylon, 39% Cool Max, 3% Lycra. Courtney DeWalter special here. I was actually browsing around their website and I found out that these are actually called the Hard Rock colorway, and she has a Moab colorway, which looks pretty cool. They're same tie-dye kind of print in red. I just like kind of a funky, stylish sock. I don't know, you don't have, I don't necessarily like to have crazy colors and patterns on my shorts or on my shirts. I like to go kind of maybe solid, not opposed to color in certain regards, but socks are a different story. Kind of like to get some style in, match up with the shoes. Definitely I'm doing reviews, taking photos, stuff like that. You don't have stuff look all wonky and mismatched. So good tie-dye color goes with a lot of stuff. I like these because I've had Injinji socks in the past. I felt like the texture of the material has kind of, I felt it on the bottom of my feet. For some reason, I don't know if this is different than some, I think I had the sport model in years past and I felt like I could feel the texture of the fiber. This one, it just feels more soft underfoot. I like the feel of the fabric. Of course, I like the height. Another thing with Injinji socks, I found that their crew height has traditionally been a little bit higher, hitting me kind of in the mid calf, which is a little weird. I like it to be kind of like, I guess at the bottom of the calf, because then it doesn't move around as much. For some reason, the height on these is much better. So I like these ones. They also sent me an artist print. This one has actually a different composition. This is 66% Cool Max and 28% nylon. This one has more nylon. Honestly, I have two in my hand, so I have the two different socks on my feet right now, and I can't really tell too much of a difference. Not really kind of sure. One says it has more Cool Max, which was the artist one. These are oars, by the way. I can't really feel too much difference between the materials, and on the run, nothing has really struck me. So I would say pick based on design there. Moving on, I have another sock from Injinji here. This is their Ultra No Show. Now, I do have a pair of Ultra socks they have, and this is a crew model, and I think they do have these Ultra. I'm not sure if they have it in wool, the Ultra model, but I do have the Ultra in crew here, but this is not a wool sock. This is very thick sock, and I kind of use this if I have shoes that are too big for me. This is a kind of sock that I would go for. Can't really stuff this sock into shoes that are really tight or perhaps the correct fit, but if you like a very cushioned sock, you would obviously adjust your shoe size accordingly and maybe go with a sock like this. So here, this is the same kind of super padded Ultra sock as this one here, but this is just a wool variety. So I've previously tested a wool model here, but this is kind of like a mid-weight sock. This is pretty thick, but this is like a full merino wool sock. Really like this sock, very comfortable, but this one seems to have more zonal padding. The toes are definitely thicker in this one, similar to the non-wool Ultra version here. I'm not a super big fan of no-show socks. I think that's more of like a road running thing. I actually post-holed a bunch through some snow in my last race up at Heaven's Gate last week, and I really cut up the top of it was just even above the socks that I was wearing. Actually, I wore lower socks, which I'll talk about, and that's kind of why I got cut up. So that's the reason why I don't wear no-show socks too much. I have tried these out. Again, they're super thick. If you want a super thick and you feel like the padding helps you for ultra runs, long distance, but maybe you don't want that super thick wool, which is, of course, could be warm, could be a bit too much coverage. You don't want that coming all the way up to your calf, but you like the padding on your foot. This is a good option here. I'm going to move into a little bit of Q&A. I did have a few questions that were somewhat related to the topics I was talking about here. This one comes from Alexander Fivat 13, really like your reviews and your socks. What brand are the one you're wearing in this video? In silence. And yes, he was correct. I believe this was my Nike video that I just released for the Terra Kiger 10. I have these socks on. These are socks from In Silence. They kind of have a off pattern. They're not symmetrical between the left and the right in terms of the pattern here. So I think that looks kind of cool. Sometimes you'll see me, I have this version here, same kind of design. The left and the right socks have different patterns. So I think they look kind of cool. The pictures, they come out pretty well. These are not my favorite sock. I feel like they do run a little bit warm, but they do have a padded heel and a padded toe box and under toe area. So if those are areas where sometimes shoes, you may get a little rubbing in the collar, that kind of, it's good to have a kind of padded heel and a padded Achilles type of sock in your arsenal. Again, I don't feel like these are the most breathable, so they're really not a race shoe pick, but for any kind of runs, like hour, 2 hour runs, daily runs, they're completely fine. I mean, you could probably go overboard with socks. Unless socks really give you an issue, you could, or I at least could get away with a lot of different socks. For any type of daily run, I kind of choose based on style. So somebody also mentioned Vinkick, Humble Running. Which socks brands do you recommend for trail running? P.S. I like the thinner In Silence socks, but they do make my feet slip a bit on technical downhills. SIDAS are currently my favorite. Compress Sport were too thin and did not hold up that long, but were very good performance-wise. So I have a bunch of socks on the table here. They're mostly clean. There's a few I have not washed, but I'll talk about some of those here. I actually do have, this is their, I think, I don't know what they call this, regular thickness here. I have some of their thinner ones, and I do agree. I think they're too thin, and they don't have the padding in the heel. They're more like a regular thin kind of thickness throughout, and I do feel like it's, I don't know, for some reason I just don't like those. Maybe it is the sliding. Those are not my faves. Pop on over again to humblerunning.com. Check my support page. Featured sock is this Smart Wool Reflection sock. Again, similar to the Courtney sock. I just, you know, a good tie-dye design. I don't know. There's a lot, you know, there's blues, there's greens, there's a little bit of hint of orange here. You can get away with yellow. I mean, this could just match with a lot of shoes. And these Smart Wool socks, I have another, I'm not wearing it now. I have a Smart Wool sock. It has maybe a hole in the ankle by now. One of the original, I think one of their Ultra Run socks, they just last forever. I mean, this has a padded heel, this has a padded toe. These socks are gonna just last forever. Really highly durable. It's kind of like a default when I'm just heading out the door and I'm just like, grab a pair of socks. You know, I only have one of these at the moment. If they're clean, I'll just typically grab these because there's really no hint of, you know, some pilling, no hint of abrasion. I have other Smart Wool socks. I'm talking like over 5 years of like using them all the time. So highly recommend these socks. They are on sale at REI. Click through my affiliate links. Again, it's going to kick back a little bit to me if you want to match up with what I got going on here. I'm just going to talk through what I got on the table here. I have another pair of Injinjis here. These are the Run Lightweight Crew. So these are going to be a little bit thinner. I did a review on these. I like toe socks. Sometimes, you know, if a toe box is wide, but the shoe overall is not overly, you know, having too much volume, I'll wear a thinner toe sock. A lot of times I pick socks based on the volume inside of a shoe and wanting to get kind of the right fit. I have a pair of Creeper socks here. This is, again, another type of toe sock. This is a full merino sock here. It's kind of similar to this Injinji wool sock. Again, merino wool. This one I think is a little bit softer, and it's a slightly thinner than this one, but a little bit thicker than this one. Again, I kind of like vary. This is a sock that when I have topos, I'll just, for some reason it sticks in my head. Maybe I was just testing these at the same time I had some topos. If I've got topos, I'll throw on Creeper socks. It's just like easy to do. If I have some thinner socks, like again, I have this Norda over here. This has very voluminous toe box, we'll say, in the 002 here, but it's kind of like a lightweight shoe. So if I wear like a very thick kind of toe sock, it feels like a little bit mismatched. If you have like a lightweight type of shoe, or you know, a minimal feeling shoe underfoot, but you have a thick sock, it can kind of feel weird. So this kind of pairing is what I would do here. I would wear probably an Injinji here, run lightweight sock with this, because it has the space in the toe box, but I still want to have, you know, this is a thin shoe underfoot. So having a less thick sock will maintain that kind of ground feel that I get from this shoe through the sock to my foot. Does that make sense? Yeah, I hope it does. Couple of other standards here. One more standard here. This is Darn Tough Stride Micro Crew Ultra Lightweight. This is when I have a shoe that is very snug, or I do not need to fill up any volume inside. You'll see me wearing these a lot. I have a craft shoe in for test right now, and that shoe has a little bit of a tapered toe box. So this is kind of like my thinnest sock. You know, I have a right sock, which is really just a liner, but I feel like that doesn't offer zero or any protection. This one gives a good amount of protection at a super thin sock, very light. This is a standard. You'll see this in a lot of my runs. One more sock I have on the table here. This is called a Jogology sock. I was sent this for testing actually, and I have been running it. This is actually one that's not clean. I pulled this out of the hamper right now, so I'm not gonna keep it away from me. Anyway, they have an anatomical fit, which I really like. Left and a right sock here. You could see that. Again, these are very padded on the heel, and also especially padded in the toe box, and there's no seams in the toe box. So that's something I really like in the sock. I feel like this is more of a, it's not a budget sock. They use a recycled yarn. It just feels like a regular sock. It seems to be highly durable. Again, I've been using this on and off. Crew height, not too high. They're not much of a pattern. That's the only thing here. These are just straight black. So if you want a comfortable sock, but maybe you want to be understated, this could be a good option. One thing, I was running the VJ Ultra 3. I ran through a bunch of puddles in these socks, a bunch of streams actually. Got soaked. They did seem to hold water quite a bit in this sock right here. So I wasn't impressed with the water retention performance, but if you know you're not going to be doing some of the extreme wet testing or running through streams like I do sometimes in my test runs, you know, everyday running, these are going to be just fine, and they'll be cheaper than a lot of the other socks. I'm seeing these at regular price, I think around $17. I don't know if they go on sale beyond that, but Jogology. Standard sock gets the job done. There you go. Moving on to socks here. The last commenter mentioned SIDAS. And this is the sock I wore at the Heaven's Gate mountain run. And this is a dual layer sock. So you have an outside layer, and these are socks that I purchased myself, by the way. I have two models of SIDAS here. I saw that Jim Walmsley was sponsored at one point by them, or they picked him up. Brands, if you're out there, support the athletes that are, you know, pushing the boundaries of sport. And, you know, people like me see that, hey, if Jim is running his races in these kind of socks, I trust him. So, you know, he's a good person to kind of align yourself with. They have an inner liner which is separate. So a lot of times with socks and taking care of your feet in general, you want to reduce the friction. Here you have an outer layer and an inner layer, and those two layers will kind of slide against each other instead of one layer sliding against your skin on your foot. They also have these cool like bands. It has like this sticky material here, and that goes like right forward of the heel of your foot, which is kind of nice. I think that prevents some slippage. That's kind of a cool feature. And also around the top, so the area, say from here over the top, has this kind of like sticky-ish ring of material here, so that could help to keep your foot from sliding forward. I don't know. 19-mile mountain race, and these were great. My feet were completely fine. I think I taped a couple of spots like under the middle of the ball of my foot. I think that was it. I don't know if I didn't tape any toes for that race. It was a shorter race, so typically in my 100-mile racing I'll do a little bit of foot taping, but I didn't do any, and I had zero issues with this sock. They also have another interesting sock which I did wear. I think I the local race around here in the fall, I ran these with the Victus Pro 2s, and this is called a T-free sock, and I guess the T stands for toe because it has the big toe is separate from the rest. And I found that I was just like, that's pretty interesting, because one thing is when I tape my toes for 100 milers, if I tape the big toe, the tape will rub against the next toe, and then you gotta tape that toe, and then sometimes I found, well, then that rubs the next toe, so then I end up taping a whole bunch of toes. And I was like, well, you know what, if I know maybe I get some edge rubbing in a certain shoe on my big toe, I could just kind of like isolate that off, and even if I did tape it, I wouldn't have to worry about the tape, which is the tape is causing the friction between the next toe. Again, this may be getting into the weeds too much with socks, but it was something that I had never seen. So I'm going to point it out to you. If you want to separate your big toe, maybe don't want to go as far as a full toe sock, like this one, or the Injinji here I had before. Again, these toe, with this amount of material between all of your toes, you really need a wider toe box to accommodate. It's going to be more volume. You're going to need more volume, otherwise you're going to feel completely squeezed. So this is kind of like a middle ground, because you could isolate your big toe, but again, you're not adding a bunch of volume of material in between your toes, so you're not spreading out too much inside of the toe box there, if you know what I mean. You can get that little bit of protection that you want to have, in a shoe that doesn't necessarily have a super wide toe box. Again, this has that ring of sticky material too. I guess that's a feature of their socks, reduces slippage. I don't know if they call this a quarter or a crew. It's between, I would say, a quarter height and a crew height. I think it's just okay enough. I don't really like the short socks. I want a little bit of protection. I was wearing these in Heaven's Gate, post hold, and just above the length of the sock, I got my shin all cut up. If I was wearing like my normal crew length socks that I typically wear for trail running, this one or even this one, I wouldn't have like sliced up my shin so much. So, that's a reason beyond style to wear a taller sock for trail running. One other topic I want to quickly touch on, and this is something, tariffs, okay? I filed away a couple notes. I didn't want to get into it too much because there's just too much on it right now, but as it affects the shoe and gear review industry, potentially, I filed away a couple of notes. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. One of them was from Nike, and this was from April 3rd. There was an article in Yahoo Finance. Peter Schiff, an economist, was saying Nike won't build factories in the US to make sneakers. That would add more cost than the 40% tariffs. Plus, they need to stay competitive selling to customers in other countries that don't impose tariffs. The result will be fewer sneakers sold in the US at much higher prices. So this was April 3rd, and again, I was like, I don't want to get into a whole discussion about this because, as you know, it can change from one day to the next. By the time you're watching this video, it may have completely changed again. So I don't want to get too much into it. I just want to point out a couple small things. Black Diamond, this is from April 24th. They shared on their Facebook, beginning May 5th, prices on many of our products in the United States will increase 10 to 25% due to the recent wave of global tariffs introduced. These tariffs have dramatically increased the cost of producing our gear. Again, if these tariffs are going to be just across the board, costs are going to go up, and I think that's unfortunately going to filter down to the consumer, to us as the consumer. Here, this was kind of the biggest one. I filed those two away, like, okay, do I really need to talk about this? There's plenty of people discussing this. Then I checked the Norda website. Somebody told me about this, nordarun.com, and this was just, I think, about a week ago. Dear U.S. trail runners, we have made the difficult decision to temporarily pause all shipping to the United States. So Norda, they have U.S. retailers. I'm not exactly sure how this works. If they have stock in the U.S., you can still get them at their regular prices, but you cannot buy at nordarun.com and have it shipped to the United States. due to the increased cost of the tariff. That is pretty much, I think that's the biggest domino to drop as far as I know at this particular moment. It is May 13th. We'll see what goes on going forward, but I think Norda was the one, when all this stuff was going on with Canada, that was the one that stuck in my mind, because I was in the middle of testing these 3 shoes and they had come in just at that time, and I was like, ooh, that's a Canadian brand. I wonder how this is going to turn out. This is how it turned out. So moving on with Norda, I have another comment. Awesome content. Curious to know your thoughts on the underfoot protection in the Norda 005 versus 001. I have a pair of the 005, and while they provide a lot of protection without sacrificing comfort, given the lower stack, I was running across some larger rocks in a gravel section and it was quickly taking a toll on my feet. I was wondering if the 001 was any more protective in this respect, given I read it has a firmer foam and believe the outsole has a different compound, might be harder. Okay, so we're looking at the 001 here and the 005. My manual measurements for each of these shoes are 34 millimeters at the heel for both. The stack heights are going to be the same. I think this one actually has a 7 mil drop and this has a 5 mil drop. In theory, this one should have more forefoot protection. This is a Vibram midsole, which is a little bit weird. I didn't really know Vibram did midsoles. The midsole is firmer, denser. It's not this super energetic TPE midsole. Commenter was talking about taking a toll on his feet. A lot of times, you know, this shoe is so flexible. One of my kind of thoughts on this shoe when I raced it in a 20 miler was, for this light of a shoe, I found protection pretty good in terms of the fact that the foam did not compress down. I didn't feel stuff getting through to my foot, but being that it's so flexible, there's no plate, there's going to be a lot of like movement with the shoe, and a lot of runners may be used to typically a higher stack shoe that's a little bit more rigid underfoot, and you may be used to kind of more protection in the fact that it's not moving too much throughout the bottom of your foot. So I would say you really need stronger feet to run in this type of shoe. For example, this type of shoe, you're not going to get as much kind of flex under the ball. This is just for an example here. I have this out. You're not going to get as much flex throughout the shoe across, I guess, the entire plane of the shoe underfoot. So you'll be more used to that forward roll. This one is kind of going to be more adaptable. So this, you know, it's going to tire out your foot more for sure. In terms of the rubber, this is Vibram Mega Grip. Again, you see full coverage. The lugs are thicker here. They're more spread out. So there's going to be more flex. There may be more stuff poking through between these lugs. When you have lugs that are denser or closely spaced, some rocks are just going to get caught up and not get to the base of the outsole, and then hence not through the midsole, not through to your foot. There's a lot of stuff is just going to get caught up on the lugs themselves, whereas here some stuff may miss. More stuff will obviously miss. You have a big section. If you step on anything in this big huge area here or this big huge area, it's going to push up right through your foot, whereas here you have a greater chance of it kind of getting caught up and hitting one of these lugs. Over time, and depending on the terrain, the size of the rocks, this and that, this is definitely going to be more protective shoe. Not to compare these type of shoes, Heaven's Gate Mountain Run, Zach Garner, he is a Norda Pro athlete, extreme rugged mountain race. Check my video on that one. Of course, Zach was running in the 001, which I was kind of like, wow, oh my God. I was surprised. He was considering this one, but he was worried about the snow on top. But after the race, he said, well, it wasn't as snowy as he thought it would be. So he thought he would have been able to get away with the 005. So I think looking back, I believe, I'm not putting words in his mouth, I believe when we were chatting, he said he would have run this one in hindsight. But he did run that race in this shoe, which was highly impressive. Speaking of that race, Mac Moss, he was in second. He won the race last year. He ran it both this year and last year in the 002, which is also impressive, perhaps more impressive because I feel like this is a more minimal shoe. This is definitely a more minimal shoe underfoot compared to these two. So props to him and his feet for doing that race in this shoe. And that does lead into my next question from Edwin Morales 7755. This is regarding my Nike Terra Kiger 10 video. How does this compare to the Norda 002? Seems similar-ish in stack and maybe in intended use also. So this one, I've got this one at 30.25 measured. Spec is 29.24, so you're talking 29.30 at the heel. In this one, the 002, I've got this measured at 28.24. They actually spec this at 19.15, which is pretty wild. So this has a 4 mil drop. This has a 5 mil drop. Again, this I have at 28, but it feels way thinner. I don't know if it's because it's a wider volume shoe here, but this just feels a lot more minimal underfoot. I feel more stuff under the forefoot in this shoe, but the difference is, what was the question here? How does it compare? The platforms I feel are quite different. I measure the ground platform of the Nike here, but if you can see, it kind of angles out sharply to this point here, and that's where I measure. So it seems like the forefoot's okay, but then it goes in quite a bit. So perhaps that's not the most accurate. It doesn't tell the true tale of how wide this shoe or how narrow this shoe really is of a platform. The Norda, you know, you could see this platform on the Norda. They maintains width, especially compared to this Nike here, under the midfoot, full rubber. It's wider, definitely under the heel, and the widest point is really further forward. With the Nike here, this widest point that I measure is way down here, and then it's much narrower here. The widest point is further forward here, and just when you are on the ground landing on this one, it feels way more stable than this shoe. I would trust this shoe more in technical terrain for sure than this one. So in terms of racing, again, my buddy Mac raced Heaven's Gate the last 2 years, extreme 7,600 feet of elevation gain and loss in 19 miles. That's a lot. He ran it in this shoe. So I would trust, this is a little, I feel like I ran the North Face Vective Sky 2, of course. This feels a little minimal for me. So he's got good feet, he could handle this. But if I was picking between these two shoes for that type of race or that type of up and down technical descent, I would definitely want to have this one because of the stability. It's a wider shoe, but given that wider fit, I feel like I could really lock it down around the midfoot where I want to have it snug. This one is more of a comfort fit. Again, if you watch my video there, I just don't feel like it has the lateral foothold security. I like this shoe. Very nice. Both shoes are nice. Again, I see this really like as a kind of training shoe. Very great training shoe. This one, I don't know, it's kind of thin for me. I like running it. If I had to choose between the two in technical terrain, I would go with that one there. All right, a couple of final notes here. The Merrell MTL Adapt Matrix. I have this on the table here because it has been released, I think about a month ago, maybe even less than that. $180. You can find this on Merrell's website. Reviewed this long ago. It seems like it's almost a forgotten shoe. I have to maybe try this out again. It was so long ago, and then people were asking about it. So many other shoes came out in the meantime. Now this shoe is out. Okay, so check that one out. Check out my review on that one. I have a couple of things in for test here. Merrell Vapor Glove Boa here, and I have an Innovate Trailfly Zero. These are both zero drop options. This is more of a, obviously, a zero drop running type shoe. This is, you know, Vapor Glove, extremely minimal type shoe. I've been using this for workouts indoors. I have not run in this shoe yet. I got these shoes a couple weeks ago, but it's racing that half marathon, racing this mountain run. Not really the time to be kind of playing around with new zero drop running shoes. So now that those things are in the rearview mirror, I have a little bit of space to kind of try out new stuff. I will be running more in this one. I'll maybe try this one a little bit for running, but I've been using this, like I said, for kind of indoor strength work. I actually, last night I was doing, or 2 nights ago, did some leg work in this one. Also, VJ Ultra 3, I'm rounding out the miles in those. I've got 48 miles in them. Probably do 1 or 2 more runs in that one, and then I'll do a follow-up video. They feel great so far. You know, people have been talking about the midsole degrading, losing some of that bounce. I could kind of see that, but 48 miles so far, they feel pretty good. Really like them. There's a couple of things about that shoe. I'll talk about my follow-up. Just got the Craft Nordlight Ultra 2.0. Craft has fixed their uppers. Just put up a post on that today. You know, the lace throat is just wider in this model. Before, I could not even like lace those shoes properly. Like, I like the shoes, but I feel like I could never really run in them. 20 miles in that shoe right now. I want to get a couple more. That's more of a gravel shoe, kind of road to trail, not really a technical mountain shoe. So probably maybe a run or two more in those, and you'll see a review on that one. Last one, Mount to Coast T1. Took these out a couple times already. I was kind of holding off while I was doing other stuff. They're gonna release this shoe. I saw they did post some kind of promotions on this shoe recently. Mount to Coast did. This shoe is gonna come out in early June. Reviews and stuff will be released in that time period, early June. So I have a few weeks. Like this shoe a lot, okay? Can't talk too much about it, but feels great. And I will be putting a bit more miles in these in the coming weeks, and you will see those. And that's about it. Again, check out humblerunning.com. Please sign up for my newsletter if you get a chance. Like and subscribe here on Humble Running YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this gear roundup. If you want to see more of these videos in the future, let me know down in the comments. As always, continue to throw your questions at me. I like answering them. I like reading them. It gives me ideas, and maybe I'll do a bigger, larger Q&A coming up in the future soon. So